Hello, this is Barbara Kolm, and we are running the Free Market Roadshow event here at the Legatum Institute in London. And my special guest today is Christopher Butler, who is the Executive Director of the Tholos Foundation and the Americans for Tax Reform. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining, Chris. And, we've been working together for a very, very long time. And you have recently extended the operations of the Tholos Foundation here in Europe. And just tell us a little bit more of what you're doing and how think tanks and institutes can collaborate and cooperate.
Yeah, sure thing. The Tholos Foundation is named for the Tholos on the ancient Athenian Agora, where the members of the Athenian Senate met with people from the business community and academics, scholars, over meals to discuss what might be in the best interests of Athens. And this is our model for creating a collaborative approach between different people and different parts of the community that might be oriented towards free market politics. And we try to bring people together from these diverse backgrounds. So we work with a number of different think tanks around the world, especially Europe, like you, to try to get this exchange going. We recently had an event in Delphi, Greece. We've had events recently in Nice. We have participated in a couple of different free market roadshows. We really enjoy that partnership. In a way, the work of the Tholos Foundation is very compatible and creates some good synergies with the free market roadshow as it's existed over these many years.
Also last year's event in Nice was also an eye-opening for many when the center-right groups got together, and some only discuss taxes, some only discuss philosophy, some only discuss how we can get the economy growing. But I think it's more than that.
Yeah, there are a number of different challenges that we face right now with what happens with the center-right and which direction people are going in. There's kind of a rise of some ideas that aren't as compatible with free markets on the right in some places. There's different cultural perspectives. And one of the roles that we see the Tholos Foundation playing is to help get those people that are really focused on those free market ideals to be in communication with each other, but also to be influencing public policy. I mean, it used to kind of be in the air that we breathed on the center right, what we consider free market economics. But to some degree now we've kind of lost our mooring in some places around, and we think it's really important to reorient people in that same way.
Well, we're very thankful for you to do that, because after all, we all live in Europe, at least continental Europe, with centrally planning out of Brussels, and with this overregulation and with the red tape and all those data protection, whatever you call them, laws and actually orders. And you were also focusing on American companies that suffer from that, and the cooperation between our European companies and the US companies is suffering. And so we reduce our economic well-being and the welfare for everybody. So what is your special take in tackling Brussels?
Okay, so, to give just one example, there's the DSA, DMA laws that the European Union is currently implementing. This is part of a series of a couple of different ways that the EU has unfortunately really targeted American companies in a way that's discriminatory. These laws were written in such a way that they would solely bring in big American tech companies with heavy regulation and punitive fees for non-compliance, forcibly requiring them to promote potential competitors that might arise. And it goes along with some AI regulation that's been building as well, even though there's not really, unfortunately, much of an AI industry yet in Europe. There's regulation that's already in place.
The Data Protection Act, that's all
right,
of it.
Right.
All of it.
Yes, that's right. So, there's kind of two paths that you could take if you see that you're falling behind. One is to liberalize the economy and try to create the capital markets and an exciting place where people are able to enjoy the fruits of their own labor and allow these things to grow. And then the other path leads in kind of a dark place, like the path of the DSA, DMA, and what they're doing in the UK with the DMCC, very similar project, where the attempt is instead made to hamstring foreign competitors like those large companies, the GAFA companies in the United States, and then at the same time not make those reforms that you have to make economically. And so you don't wind up growing the domestic businesses because they don't have to compete at that higher level. So we'd like to see the EU and really everywhere across the world take a more deregulatory approach, more free market approach that allows that kind of flourishing to occur and those startups to really become big. But it's not just in the tech sector, but it's everywhere.
It's everywhere. It's the food industry, it's the car industry, it's you name it.
Yes, absolutely. And unfortunately, there's what we call the Brussels effect as well, where bad ideas that gain traction in Brussels have a very bad habit of spreading elsewhere around the world, particularly in Latin America, but we really see it today in the United States as well. A lot of the European anti-competition policy, for example, is now being adopted by the Federal Trade Commission in the United States under President Biden, to the degree where our Federal Trade Commissioner, Lena Khan, actually consults with European regulatory European competition.
Really bad news.
It actually coordinates with European competition regulatory authorities in order to make sure that the governments are not competing with each other. And of course, when governments compete with each other, good things happen. Exactly. Just like when the private sector competes.
Exactly.
With each
So
other.
but that is bad news. So what can we do against that, and how can we help both industry and the citizen? Because in the end, it's the citizen who will have to pay a higher price if there is less competition, if the products are not as good as they could be if competition is allowed. So how can we help the individuals on that front?
Well, one of the most important engines of economic growth is to have pro-growth tax policy. So in the U.S., Americans for Tax Reform created the Taxpayer Protection Pledge all the way back in 1986. We have about 50% of the United States House of Representatives has signed the Taxpayer Protection Pledge now. And we have about 46% of the Senate that has signed the Taxpayer Protection Pledge. Mostly Republicans. We do have a few Democrats that have signed the Taxpayer Protection Pledge as well. And at the state, it is about there's about a third of the Republicans at the state level that have signed the Taxpayer Protection Pledge now, and then a few dozen Democrats have signed the pledge as well. But the pledge just is a very simple binary choice that people who are running for office can make, where they just say that they will vote against any and all tax increases. Now that's net over net, so you can make shifts and all kinds of reforms that you think make sense from a policy perspective. But when you take taxes off the table in that kind of a way, it really does force the hand of a politician to look for reforms that really make sense, as opposed to just being able to tax your way out of given fiscal and financial problems. And it helps to lead to those freer markets that can help to encourage growth. Because if you have a problem, for example, of debt to GDP, the U.S., which is about 125%, you can solve that one or two ways. You can either increase taxes and receipts, or you can grow the economy. And growing the economy has the added benefit of making everybody richer. And all you have to do is sort of hold spending constant in that type of environment. So that's a much better solution. It's much more painless. That's something we ought to be looking for.
Well, thank you, Christopher, for bringing this up. The tax pledge is definitely something that people should look into, first of all, and second, what you have done at the ATR with the center-right coalition meetings, with all the various sub-meetings that are being coordinated and run out of your offices in DC, and also now with in Brussels, in Europe, is great work, and we can only encourage you to join. There is one more thing that I would like to mention, that would like to ask you. How can we get the Europeans to understand the concept of tax competition, and that this is something important and that this will help the individual in the end?
Well, I have a couple of different ideas. One of the projects that we've done in the US is a project called ATR Sports, where we have taken sports teams and looked at what the salaries of the players on the sports teams are in comparison to the other teams, given the differential between tax rates. So, for example, if you have a Champions League a footballer in Austria versus the UK versus Germany, yes, how much is the salary that's being actually paid to that player? What is the take-home salary? And what you find is that those players actually make their decision in many places on where they're going to go based on what their take-home pay is, not what the number that is at the top of the sheet. And you get ordinary people to understand. We've done this with hockey teams. We've done this with football and baseball and a few other areas. But American football, but if you take a look at that, you'll see that the players are making their decisions on that basis. And when you get people that aren't paying much attention to economics or the political world to understand that, I'm losing out on my favorite player because of these government policies, it helps to extend that to other things as well. So that's just one idea.
That's a great idea. May we copy that?
Absolutely. That would be great. We could work on that together. But the pledge does translate to other countries as well. I mean, Javier Milei in Argentina is our most famous Taxpayer Protection Pledge signer outside of the not ours, but the most famous Taxpayer Protection Pledge signer outside of the United States. But we also have a few dozen members of the Parliament in the UK who have now signed the Taxpayer Protection Pledge. And just a couple of weeks ago, we launched it in Brazil and had a few dozen members of the Brazilian Congress that have signed the Taxpayer Protection Pledge. So it is something that's starting to catch on in a few other places.
Wow, that's great. So, let's collaborate on the ATR sports topic, and let's do that across Europe.
Okay, that sounds great.
Then we'll see the results and we will discuss them with you. We will present them together.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you very much, Christopher, for joining, and looking forward to further collaboration on all kinds of fronts, as long as we have a freer and more prosperous society.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.